So let's recap. You know, let's tie it all nicely off with a bow. Okay. So in this fight, we have been we rotated over this direction from epicenter after fighting and killing and thirsting in single enemy. The remaining two run away. We have no idea where they went, and then we start getting fired on by a third party. We get forced into the tunnel beneath and have just taken the zipline up in order to you know, get back up on the high ground. And now we're just trying to figure out like just where all the squads are and get our bearings, right?
Dude, the footsteps are so
no, I think there might be someone. There's this here. And so, you know, like we're just like trying to figure out like where the enemies are before like making any hard commitments into the area, and like, you know, further repositioning here. And right here, you see enemies, right? You see this person in red, which I believe is the crypto, and this one over here, we'll see in a second as I zoom in on them, is the horizon. And so right now, looking at like where the enemy squads and ourselves are located relative to one another, right? They're right here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna shoot on them, right? And it's not really clear like whether it needs to happen now or later, right? Like after like we shoot on them. But I think what we need to be conscientious of is sort of like the shape of the circle and the way that this lobby is probably going to play out. You know, just in all likelihood, right? There's two other squads other than two here that are engaging with one another. If we're just like playing like, you know, just the odds here. The remaining two enemy squads are probably like over here and like over here, right? Because we're closer to the fat side of the ring than this first enemy squad that we're about to engage here is. And so from that perspective, right, like we're in a pretty bad situation. Like overall, like the cover here is like fine. You know, it's decent. It's not great, but it's like not so good. It's not like this tower up here, like where people are just going to try and go around and like avoid interacting with you at all. Like it's not that good. So we probably would like to see if we can get around them or just even shift a little bit off center to the right or to the north so that like we're just not as close to the fat side of the ring. So it's less likely that we'll get directly sandwiched. Oh, right here. So we shoot here, right, which I guess is like okay. Oh, the horizon's almost broken. It's not great, but then like from there, right, like after like getting that damage in, right, that's gonna force the enemy squad into a defensive posture, which creates an opportunity for us to rotate. And so I think this is like the first major error, is like not rotating quickly enough, right? So we had options where we could have rotated here to the right or to the left. You're gonna see that there's an octane jump pad here, right, which could have actually facilitated a push like into like the tower here, which would have been a decent position for our squad. Could have also been used to approach and actually take this height here. Much riskier play. I probably wouldn't make that play. But I think like or even like running along the ground. I don't have my portal yet, so it's not an option. But like, you know, just like right now, like, I need to be thinking about like how to get our squad like into a better position, because in general. And like Meech is like going to be asking me like where to go and stuff like that. In general, with the squads that I play with, the role I typically fill is to play in our rotations and figure out like where we should go, because I tend to have pretty strong opinions about those matters. And I'm not doing that job, right? I'm like getting too focused on like these enemy squads here, getting too distracted, and like not setting aside the time to like think on the macro strategy level for our team, which a lot of players I think don't tend to do. And so like I am not doing my job here. So
gold.
Yeah.
On the other one. We're gonna get pinched here, Frost.
Yep. Yeah. Meech already feels it, and yeah, he's completely right. There's a tower. There's also a valid rotation through the back here, right? So there are a couple of like valid options for our rotations.
We can push far here into the barrels. I know it's kind of
that we didn't take.
We can go that way. It doesn't matter. Your choice, Frost. You're the one that plays ranked all the time.
I don't want to run in front of these guys.
She's
So now like looking at sort of like what the circle's looking like, knowing how much time we've spent here, and also how this enemy team, right, they've backed up even further. They've backed even further into the ring, so now they're over here, right? So they're even like more like creating that problem for us, like where we're getting sandwiched potentially by the other squads.
80 on her gold.
So we make the rotation here, right? And so
Yeah.
the next error that I make, I think, is this isn't so much an error, but this is like, I don't know, like this is like kind of like a questionable decision, which is to play the roof here, right? Knowing that enemies are coming at us from behind, right? I'm like really depending on this cover here and like not being overexposed to enemies on this side of the cover, or being able to like use like these like little railings and stuff to like make it hard to hit me, right? So this is like kind of greedy, right? Like it gives me a really strong line of sight on these enemies over here, right? But it's risky. And you know, we'll sort of see me pay for that in a second, especially considering that we've got a Caustic and knowing that it's very likely that we're going to be in a sandwich situation, right? Like my head should be going to, it's like, we're going to play around the Caustic. Like let's do the Caustic thing, right? We'll just play the inside of this building and weather the storm, right? In the same way, like that tower becomes like a position you don't want to push because it's really hard to push. It's like if you find a Caustic, you know, set up in a building with an entire squad sitting inside there, it's like you're going to be kind of reluctant to try and like push that building if you just have like an easier way around, right, to go and enter the circle. You'll probably just play for a position instead of trying to fight that squad. So I think like that's like, so this choice to take the high ground here specifically, I don't think individually is bad, but like overall, right, like just not really keeping like the Caustic option in mind. It really like this is the play that ought to be made at this point. You know, not like really kind of focusing myself on that, I think is definitely an error. So I guess like playing around the legends this year, absolutely needed to punish the crypto harder. Like these are shots that are completely free. He's completely wide of cover. This should have been killing. This should have been lethal. So this is a very clear error. Had we killed him, like anything that like this squad over here is trying to push us, trying to take this space from us and prevent us from making this rotation. And so, you know, like I needed to kill him here. Killing him here basically shuts that down, right? That turns that idea into like a pipe dream for this squad. So I needed to kill here. So that was an additional error that was made. Probably the third error.
Hard pushing,
Crypto's broken gold.
Like, yeah, breaking here was like not good enough. Could have naded him off the cover. I get Gibraltar ulted, and I think this is like the last major issue here, which is that I do not deal with the Gibraltar ult by using my Q. And I think this is a perfect opportunity to use the Q. I think it's fine as the Wraith to be the one that's up here on the roof taking these risks, but as soon as like we get a hint or like, you know, taking activity from like another squad, which by the way, like, you know, we are, because we know we thirsted the first enemy of this squad. There's a Horizon and a Crypto, right? There is no Gibraltar anywhere, and now there's a Gibraltar falling on our heads, which means there's a Gibraltar from a different team, right? A third-party team that's about to attack us. And so, you know, my immediate reaction here has to be protect yourself, right? Like we have to get ready to make the Caustic play and to hold down the building. And instead, I get like really greedy and try and like find some footsies here, like where I can like avoid damage from the ult while still keeping the high ground, right? And then even here, right, like after I get hit, I like try and like hold height and like just do something cheeky with the roof here, and like hope that like it prevents an angle from being created between me. When instead I should have just used my Q. I died without using my Q when there are two very valid use cases where I should have used it. So, you know, a really clear example of like where I had this resource that could have kept me alive and didn't. And then like what winds up happening after this like really has nothing to do with me because I'm knocked. And I'm like trying to crawl into safety, but my teammates, you know, like just aren't able to clutch. Like they actually should have just abandoned me and, you know, made the play with the Caustic inside the building. But he you know, I mean, Meech and I are duos, and so like, you know, he wanted to come save his boy, which, you know, it's a choice. It's not like good or bad, but it's, you know, this is like definitely like I think on so many fronts, like this loss here, what could have been like a really, you know, resounding win, like is definitely my fault. Like. So like just, you know, real quick, like run through the list again, right? Like there's, you know, me not doing my job as a decision maker for macro strategy rotations, not seeing the actual rotations themselves and not focusing and prioritizing like sort of getting like off center, not being lethal on like a really free and easy shots like on a Crypto, and then finally right here, getting really greedy with my positioning instead of using my Q to prepare to make the Caustic play. So that wraps up the analysis segment for now, and I'm going to switch over into aim training.